Hey guys, so yesterday I should say, in class you were working on the 2-5 practice on page 17. So you had to find the slope of a line parallel to each of these. Remember, just comparing slopes and then perpendicular. At the bottom I told you to wait on this. I put a little note here, the point slope form. It's called the point slope form because you're using the slope and a point. If you have the slope and a point, you can write the equation. This can be a little bit tricky, so we're going to spend a couple days on this. I'm going to introduce it to you now, but then we'll do more work with it next week. So the point slope form, you have your slope, which is m, and then you have a point, any point, x1, y1. So when you put it in, you're going to write y minus whatever the y value is in your point. And then x equals m, your slope, times x minus whatever the x value is in your point. So we're going to practice with that on this page. I'm going to do some of them with you, and then I'm going to have you try some. So the two things that you need, obviously, are a point and your slope. So with this one, I have a point, and it says parallel to this line. Well, we know parallel lines have the same slope. So our slope for our line that we're going to write is 7/5. So you're ready to write. You have your slope, you have your x1, y1 from your point. So when you write the equation, it's just y minus the y value in your point, 2, equals your slope times x minus the x value in your point. And that's your answer. You'd be able to distribute and move the 2 over to make it slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. But in this case, we're just going to practice using the point slope form. All right, let's try another one. So again, this is your x1, y1, and your slope. It's parallel to this, so it's going to be the same slope. That's your m. So again, we're going to take and we're going to plug it into this equation. The sooner you get comfortable using this equation, the easier it's going to be. So again, it's y minus the y value, y minus 4, equals your slope, which we said was the same because they're parallel, 9/2, and then x minus the x value in your point. That's your equation. Okay, so let's do one more together, and then I'll have you try some. So it's through this point, 1, -1. Again, that's your x1, y1. It's parallel. The next few are all parallel, so it's the same slope. There's your m. Here's your m on this one. All right, so again, it's y minus the y value. So y minus -1 equals the slope, which is -3/4, times x minus the x value in the point 1. Now, we typically won't leave it like this. Typically, we would just write y plus 1 instead. I'm going to pause the video. The phone is ringing. Give me just a sec. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So, like I was saying, you don't want to leave the y minus -1, so a lot of times we'll just write y plus 1 equals the slope times x minus 1. Because again, it's y minus the y value in your point equals the slope times x minus the x value in your point. All right, you can go now. This little recording. There we go. All right, so let's do another one. Through the point 2, 3, parallel to 7/5 x plus 4, so there's your slope. So again, it's y minus 3 equals your slope, 7/5, times x minus the x value in your point. And that's it. This is not a formula that's given to you. There's a few formulas this chapter. Slope formula, y equals mx plus b, this one. So we'll have to make sure we're comfortable with those. Okay, I would like for you to try 22 and 24. If you want, you can pause the video now and try them, or you can work on those in class tomorrow. But let's move down to perpendicular. And again, if you want to pause this now and try that, that's perfectly fine. All right, perpendicular, same thing, but our slope is not going to be the same. They're negative reciprocals. So the first thing we have to do is we want to get this equation to look like the others. So I need to put this minus x on the other side of the equation, so it'll become a plus x. So I'm left with y equals, and we typically put the x first, so it's positive x plus 1. All right. Well, we have the x1 and y1 for our point. We need to know the slope. Now, if it was parallel, we'd just say the slope's 1. Well, they're perpendicular. So 1 over 1 would be perpendicular to negative 1 over 1. That's the only time the perpendicular slope is the opposite, like 1 and negative 1. It's not going to be like 2 and negative 2, because remember, you have to flip it. So this is the slope that we're using. This is the point that we're using. So remember, it's y minus the y value in your point, but since it's a negative 5, we're going to put plus 5 instead of writing like that. Equals your slope, negative 1, times x minus the x value in your point, x minus 1. All right, so next one, get that 5x to the other side. So it's y equals negative 5x minus 3. So if we were writing a line that was parallel to it, you'd use negative 5. But since it's perpendicular, negative 5 over 1, if I flip it and change the sign, it's going to become positive 1/5. So that's the m we're using. Here's our point, our x1, y1. So it's time to write it. Y minus the y value in your point, 2, equals your slope, which is now 1/5, times x minus the x value in your point. Okay. For some reason, part of my packet's missing. So I'm going to just write down what it is instead of trying to find it right now and wasting your time. So 28, you had some to look at. It's through the point 1,3, and it's perpendicular to negative x plus y equals 1. So again, let's get y by itself. So we'll add the x over. So y equals positive x plus 1. Our slope is 1. So if it's perpendicular to that, 1 over 1 becomes negative 1 over 1. So when we go to type it in or plug it in, y minus the y value in your point, 3, equals negative 1, your slope, times x minus the x value in your point. All right, let's go down to 31. We'll do just a couple more together, and then we're good. All right, 31, we have the point 2, negative 2, and it's perpendicular to the line 3y minus x equals 0. Again, we need to get that equation into y equals mx plus b form first so we can figure out what the slope is. So I'm going to add the x. 3y equals 0 plus x, which is just x, divide by 3. And you might say, well, what's the slope of that? Well, if there's nothing in front of the x, there's a 1 there. So your slope's 1/3 x. So if my slope's 1/3, perpendicular to that would be to flip it and change the sign, negative 3 over 1, which would just be negative 3. So now we can write our equation. Y minus the y value in your point equals your slope, negative 3, times x minus the x value in your point. But instead of leaving it like that, remember, we'll just change this to a plus. So y plus 2 equals your slope times x minus 2. Okay. So the only other thing I would like for you to do, you had the 2 questions to do on the previous page, 22, 24, and then on this page, I just want you to do number 32. Okay, so 22, 24, and 32. Practice those, and we'll talk about them. Tomorrow in class, we're actually not going to do the other questions on page 18. You are going to be working in class on pages 19 and 20. And then we're going to do more practice with these equations of lines next week. If you have questions, let me know. Have a great day, guys.